What would you do if the man you loved proposed to you, only to have his family try to destroy everything you built, just to protect their wealth? Megan thought her life was simple until she fell in love with Connor, who turned out to be the heir to a powerful dynasty. But when his father, Franklin Miller, forced her to sign a prenuptial agreement that stripped her of everything, Megan's past came crashing into her present. Stay tuned to see how Megan turns the tables, revealing a shocking truth that will change everything. My channel's struggling, so if you're intrigued, please comment 1 to help me out. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Subscribe to see how it ends, and I wish you all good health. My name is Megan. At 27, I thought I was living a life of simplicity and peace, teaching elementary school. On the outside, everything appeared calm, as if nothing could disrupt my world. But beneath the surface, I carried a past far more complicated than anyone could ever guess, carefully guarded from the prying eyes of the world. It all began the day I met Connor at a small cafe near the school where I taught. He was unlike anyone I'd ever known. Connor was genuine, warm-hearted, and had a smile that could light up the darkest room. The moment our eyes met, there was an undeniable connection. Little did I know, Connor was hiding a secret. He was the heir to one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in the country, the Millers. As our relationship grew, so did our bond. It felt effortless, as if we'd known each other forever. What struck me most was how Connor never once mentioned his family's wealth. I, too, kept my past hidden. I was simply Megan, the humble teacher who adored her students and lived in a modest apartment. After 6 months together, the school organized a field trip to the aquarium. Connor, ever the thoughtful person, volunteered to join us and help supervise the kids. The spring day was perfect, with the air filled with excitement and energy. As we guided the children from one exhibit to the next, we stopped at the penguin enclosure where the little creatures waddled around in perfect harmony. Connor leaned down to one of the kids, whispering something in their ear, then stood up straight and turned to me with a mischievous sparkle in his eyes. "I've been doing my homework," he said, grinning playfully. "Did you know penguins mate for life? They stay together forever. I want to do the same, Megan. I love you." Before I could fully process his words, Connor dropped to one knee right there in front of the penguins with the children's giggles filling the air around us. He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it, and revealed a glistening ring. "Megan, will you marry me?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. I stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the suddenness of it all. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the children. They were holding up handmade signs that read, "Say yes, Miss Vaughn," and "Marry Connor." A wave of laughter bubbled up through my tears. Without hesitation, I nodded. "Yes, Connor, I'll marry you," I said, my heart swelling with joy. The children cheered, and the sound of their laughter echoed through the air. It was a moment I would cherish forever. But as with all good things, joy is often accompanied by complications. Connor told me his father wanted to meet me. His voice was cautious, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to unfold. "My father wants to meet you," he said one evening, his tone quiet but tense. Meeting Franklin Miller felt like stepping into the lion's den. His office was perched on the top floor of a towering skyscraper, offering a sweeping view of the city below. But it wasn't the view that unsettled me. It was the way he looked at me. His eyes seemed to slice through me, as if he were measuring my very soul. I felt his judgment before he even spoke. "So, you're a teacher?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. I hesitated, taken aback, but I held my ground. "Yes, sir," I replied softly, unsure of what else to say. "Do you know how much Miller Enterprises is worth?" he pressed, his voice laced with superiority. "No, sir, I'm not interested in those things," I said honestly, trying to steady the frantic pounding of my heart. His wealth meant nothing to me. He let out a hollow laugh, devoid of warmth. "Everyone says that at first," he sneered. "Then when the divorce comes, they all want half of everything," he continued, his voice bitter. He launched into a lengthy monologue about protecting family wealth, about how no one should ever be able to take it from them. Finally, he pulled a document from his desk drawer and slid it across the table. "It's simple, Miss Megan. If you want to marry my son, you'll sign this. It's a prenuptial agreement waiving any claim to the Miller fortune. No money, no property, nothing." Connor, who had been silent up until that point, finally spoke up, his frustration evident in his voice. "Dad, this is ridiculous," he said sharply. "Megan's not like that." Franklin shot back. "They're all the same until they prove otherwise." "Enough, Dad," Connor shouted. "Don't talk about my future wife like that ever again. Megan, you don't need to sign it." I sat there, the weight of the moment thick in the air. Franklin's cold, unwavering gaze was fixed on me. Without a second thought, I picked up the pen and signed the document. My swift action seemed to take Franklin by surprise. "You're not even going to read it?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I don't need to, Mr. Miller," I replied calmly, meeting his gaze. "I'm not interested in your money. I love Connor." The following months were a whirlwind of wedding planning. The Miller family insisted on a lavish ceremony, more about showcasing their wealth than celebrating love. My mother, Josephine, observed the whole process with a mixture of amusement and concern. She was the only one who knew the truth about my past, the only one who understood why I could sign that contract without a second thought. The night before the wedding, my mother called me into her room. Her expression was serious, almost secretive. She handed me a sealed envelope, her hands trembling slightly. "Your biological father left this for you," she said softly. "He wanted you to open it on your wedding day." My heart skipped a beat. "My biological father?" I asked, my voice unsteady. I had never known my real father. My mother had always told me she raised me alone. At least, that's what I had believed all these years. "There's so much you don't know, Megan," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "So much I've kept hidden to protect you. Tomorrow, when you open this, you'll understand everything." The morning of the wedding arrived, and the cathedral was filled with the country's most powerful business figures, friends and associates of the Millers. My mother sat in the front row holding the mysterious envelope. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes spoke volumes. Just before the ceremony began, Franklin Miller approached me with a smirk on his face. "I hope you don't regret signing that contract, dear daughter-in-law," he said sweetly, though there was an underlying malice in his tone. It was then that my mother, standing quietly at the back of the church, decided it was time. With a calm but purposeful voice, she rose from her seat and walked toward me, holding the envelope. "It's time, darling," she said, her words carrying a weight that hung heavily in the air. My heart raced as I took the envelope from her. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Everyone's eyes were on me. Inside, I found a letter and several legal documents that I didn't fully understand. As I began to read the letter aloud, the room seemed to shift. Franklin Miller, who had been standing beside me, his face full of smug arrogance, suddenly went pale. His face twisted as disbelief and fear spread across his features. The letter began, "Dear Megan, if you're reading this, it means your wedding day has come, and unfortunately, I am not there to walk you down the aisle. My name is Theodore Vaughn, and I am your father." The world around me blurred as I struggled to process the shock, but the letter wasn't finished. "Before you continue reading, please review the attached documents," it instructed. My hand trembled as I pulled the papers from the envelope. The first documents were property deeds, followed by stock certificates and financial records. As I flipped through each one, I noticed Franklin Miller's face growing even paler. His lips barely moved as he muttered under his breath, "Impossible." "Vaughn Industries," I read aloud, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions threatening to break through. "You may be wondering why you never knew me. The answer is long and painful. Your mother and I were deeply in love, but our business enemies were relentless. After several attempts on my life, I made the hardest decision of all, to disappear in order to protect you and your mother, Josephine. Your mother agreed to keep everything a secret and to create a new life for you, far away from the corporate world that had caused us so much pain. But I never stopped watching over you. From the shadows, Vaughn Industries did not disappear as everyone believes. It simply transformed, operating under different names and across various countries. All these years, I've been building an empire for you, my only heir, The documents you hold give you full control of Vaughn Holdings, a conglomerate that includes 40% of global tech industries, the Blue Moon hotel chain, Vaughn Pharmaceuticals, and a majority stake in Miller Enterprises. By now, Franklin was visibly shaken, leaning against one of the church's grand columns, his face drained of color. His disbelief was palpable. "A majority stake isn't possible," he muttered, trying to regain his composure, glancing from the documents to me, then back at the papers. I continued reading, my voice unwavering. "Yes, my daughter. For years, I secretly acquired shares in Miller Enterprises through various shell companies. As of today, you control 51% of the Miller business empire. Why reveal this now? Because my sources informed me of the unjust prenuptial contract you were forced to sign." Franklin Miller, notorious for his ruthless business tactics, now found himself on the defensive. The truth was coming to light, and I could feel its weight settling deep within me. "Your mother has secretly managed this entire empire under different identities, preparing for this moment. She will teach you everything you need to know. I love you, my daughter. I hope you can forgive my absence and understand that every decision I made was to protect you. With eternal love, your father, Theodore Vaughn." The silence that followed in the cathedral was deafening. I looked up to find Connor staring at me, his eyes filled with a mix of astonishment and admiration. Franklin stood frozen, as if he had seen a ghost. His arrogance had evaporated, replaced by fear. My mother, now standing tall and confident, looked every inch the powerful businesswoman she had always been. Gone was the quiet accountant. In her place stood the strategist who had orchestrated this long game all along. "Mr. Miller," my mother said, her voice thick with authority, "I think it's time we renegotiate that prenuptial agreement, don't you think?" Franklin, clearly rattled, attempted to regain his composure. "This is a trick. Vaughn is dead. His company was dissolved years ago." My mother remained unshaken. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a stack of documents. "Are you sure?" she replied smoothly. "I have here the records of every stock transaction involving Miller Enterprises for the past 20 years. Would you like to review them?" Connor stepped forward, taking my hand in his. He squeezed it reassuringly before speaking. "I don't care if you're richer than my entire family, Megan. I love you for who you are," he said, his words warming me from the inside out. Tears welled in my eyes as I whispered, "And I love you, Connor." "I never cared about money, yours or mine." At that moment, Franklin completely lost control. "This is an ambush, a conspiracy," he roared, but his outburst was abruptly interrupted by a voice from the back of the church. An older man, leaning heavily on a cane, began making his way toward us. As he slowly approached, whispers rippled through the cathedral. The older businessmen in the room recognized him instantly. "It's Theodore Vaughn," several murmured in awe. Franklin's face went completely white, his expression a mix of terror and disbelief. I felt a rush of emotions as I looked at the man standing before me, the father I had never known, the one who had stayed hidden all these years. He stopped in front of me, his eyes identical to mine, filled with tears. "I'm sorry I missed so many years of your life, my daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But now, I can finally be here for you on the most important day of your life." Overcome with emotion, I ran into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. 27 years of unanswered questions, of emptiness that had haunted my heart, finally found their closure. Franklin, who had been trying to sneak away, froze as my father's voice called out, "Leaving so soon, Franklin? Don't you want to discuss how you tried to destroy my company 20 years ago, or how you sent assassins to my home?" With a groan, Franklin collapsed onto a nearby bench, the weight of his own guilt dragging him down. "It was business. Just business," he mumbled weakly. "No," my father interrupted calmly, his voice firm. "It was cruelty. The same cruelty you showed when you forced a young teacher to sign a contract that stripped her of everything. But life, as it often does, has a way of making things right." A sense of relief washed over me as my father's words resonated through the room. My mother, who had been standing quietly beside me, stepped forward and took my father's hand. In that single moment, the 20 years of separation between them seemed to vanish. Their eyes met, and I could see the love that had never truly faded. "The wedding will continue," I said, looking at Connor, who stood by my side. "If you still want to marry the heir to Vaughn Industries." Connor smiled, his expression warm and full of sincerity. He squeezed my hand gently. "I would marry you even if you had no money," he said, his voice steady with love. With that, the ceremony continued, though nothing was the same. Instead of Franklin Miller walking me down the aisle, it was my father who took on that role. As we moved down the aisle, I could feel the weight of Franklin's gaze burning into my back, but it was clear that he had lost all control. He sat in his seat, silent and defeated, exposed as his web of manipulation unraveled before everyone. At the reception, surrounded by family and close friends, my father revealed the full truth: how Franklin Miller had waged a covert campaign to destroy Vaughn Industries using illegal and violent tactics. He explained how years ago Franklin had faked his own death to shield us from the dangers threatening our family, working in secret to rebuild his empire piece by piece. "Your mother," my father said, his eyes softening as he glanced at her with deep admiration, "was extraordinary. She managed the entire empire under false identities while posing as a humble accountant. Without her, none of this would have been possible." The months that followed brought monumental changes for both our family and the business. Franklin Miller was forced to step down as CEO of Miller Enterprises once his past crimes came to light, revealing his ruthless tactics and the lengths he had gone to protect his empire. Connor, always more ethical and compassionate than his father, took over the company, steering it in a new direction with fresh ideas. After 20 years of forced separation, my parents finally remarried. Their wedding was small, intimate, and private, completely the opposite of mine, yet perfect in its simplicity. Their love story had always been about quality, not quantity. In a groundbreaking move, Vaughn Industries and Miller Enterprises merged under a new name, Vaughn Miller Global. Connor and I worked side by side to reshape both companies, focusing on social responsibility and ethical business practices. We weren't just building a legacy for ourselves, we were laying the foundation for future generations. Years later, Franklin Miller, once the embodiment of corporate greed and manipulation, came to us a changed man, humbled by his past and filled with remorse. He sought redemption. One evening during a family dinner, he confessed his wrongs. "Money and power consumed me," he said quietly, his gaze filled with regret as he looked around the table. "They turned me into a monster who nearly destroyed my own son's life." It was a moment of raw honesty from the man who had once been a symbol of ruthless ambition, but it also reminded me that even the most lost souls can find their way back to the light. In the years that followed, we established the Josephine Vaughn Foundation to support teachers and schools in underserved areas. We named it after my mother, who had taught us all that true strength isn't found in wealth or power, but in love and perseverance. She was the silent force behind our family's success, holding everything together. My father, however, made up for lost time. He became the most devoted grandfather to our children, teaching them about business. Yes, but more importantly, about integrity and compassion. It was a role he had longed for, and he embraced it with all his heart. 5 years after that life-changing wedding, our family was complete and healed. The business empire that once felt all-consuming now took a back seat to the love that bound us together. We still thrived professionally, but the most important thing in our lives was our connection to one another. Every time I glance at the framed prenuptial contract hanging in my office, I smile. It's a reminder of how the universe sometimes has mysterious ways of delivering justice. And when Franklin Miller joins us for Sunday dinners, carrying gifts for his grandchildren and seeking business advice from my father, I'm reminded that forgiveness and redemption are possible even for those who once seemed beyond hope. My mother often says, "Money can buy many things, but love, integrity, and family are priceless." And she's absolutely right. Our story isn't just about poetic justice or satisfying revenge. It's about the triumph of love over greed, integrity over manipulation, and family over fortune. Though I now run one of the largest business conglomerates in the country, I've never stopped teaching. Once a week, I return to the same local elementary school where I once taught, leading a project designed to introduce kids to the basics of teamwork and entrepreneurship through fun, hands-on activities. They learn how to work together, come up with creative ideas, and understand simple concepts like saving money or running a small business. Some things like the love for teaching are part of who you are, no matter how much your life changes. This project has become my way of staying grounded, reminding myself that no matter how high you climb in life, the most important lessons are often the simplest ones. It's not just about business, it's about shaping the future one lesson at a time. What do you do when everything you thought you knew about your past, your family, and your future is suddenly turned upside down? Do you stand your ground or let it all unravel? Megan's world was shaken to its core the day she discovered the truth about her father, a man who had disappeared from her life long ago to protect her. The wedding, the prenuptial agreement, and even the wealth of the Miller family, all of it was part of a much larger plan. In a single moment, Megan's quiet life as a teacher was turned into something far grander, as she learned that she had inherited not just a fortune, but an entire empire. With the revelations from her biological father, the shocking truth about Vaughn Industries, and the unexpected twist of family loyalty, Megan stood taller than ever before. She didn't just inherit wealth, she inherited the strength, wisdom, and values that had been hidden from her for years. And in that instant, she reclaimed her power, facing Franklin Miller and his empire with poise, confidence, and the unwavering support of her true family. But despite all the riches, Megan never lost sight of what really mattered: love, integrity, and family. As she and Connor worked to rebuild their lives together, their focus shifted from wealth to making a real impact on the world. Through their work with Von Miller Global and their dedication to their children, they proved that success is about more than just fortune, it's about making a difference. So, what do you think? Was Megan right to embrace her inheritance? Or should she have walked away from the power and wealth her father left her? Have you ever had your world turned upside down by a hidden truth? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.